And now, back to the Paranormal Guys podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Neil without Steve today. But guess what, boys and girls, children of all ages? I have the one, the only, Bob from Bob After Dark, helping me co-host. While Steve is on his excursion trying to find the Bigfoot, we haven't heard from him. So we don't know what is going on with Steve. Did he get lost? Did he get captured by a Bigfoot? What is going on? Bob, thanks for coming on, taking Steve's spot today.
Oh, hey there, Neil. Nice to see you. It's always a pleasure here on the Paranormal Guys podcast. I'm sorry my background does not look as good as yours. I'm used to streaming on Twitch these days, and it's a smaller resolution. So now you can see behind the scenes, I'm literally hanging in a Ouija board tapestry on some blinds. That's my background.
You're not in your usual TV station over at
No, this is my at-home studio. I'm currently in the process of building. So what you get is tapestry paperclip to some blinds.
And you just started doing the Twitch. Right, Bob?
Yeah, Bob After Dark, twitch.tv/Bob After Dark plays. If you guys don't know who I am, I'll give a quick introduction so we're not holding.
Let's find out.
Oh, yeah. So you might as well know. My name's Bob. I host a paranormal podcast called Bob After Dark. I come out every week. I talk about legends, lore, supernatural, things that go bumping in the night, lights in the sky, weird cryptid stories. I'm like those guys you see on TV, except I have a sense of humor. So my show is I'm also the host of my radio show once a week that turns into a podcast. And then I also do Twitch streaming and plays like spooky video games. And then I also do conventions. I travel all over the world to all kinds of conventions. So
and Bob's also doing more tours for us this year.
Yes, I was a proud ghost tour host last year for Neil at the Graveside Paranormal. So I was pretty proud about that.
Yep. And
I also have a TV show coming out on HBO at some point.
Yes, he does. We got an interesting guest on here today. People who know about Graveside Paranormal Tours and this and that, we have spirit boxes and stuff like that. We have our homemade equipment like the Anaha Spirit Portal box. So I find things like this very interesting. So we're going to pick the brains of Staticom. Staticom is the name of the method of spirit communication we use, developed by Tony and Cherie Rathman, Ron Yacovetti, and pardon me if I don't pronunciate, and Lourdes Gonzalez. I'm going to welcome them in at this time. Staticom, come on in. Hello today.
Hello.
How's it going? Did I pronounce your last name correctly, Ron?
Yes, actually, my last name to this day is difficult for me, so kudos for nailing it the first time. I don't always.
Well, you must do horrible when you have a couple drinks.
Oh, yeah, no, forget it.
Thank goodness he doesn't drink.
No, it's very downhill from there, but thank you for having us all.
I always get his name right. Always.
Right?
That's right.
Even the first time.
Mr. Yacovetti.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were guests on Entity Voices Paranormal Evidence with Tony and Cherie and Chris Allgood and Audrey Keeler when we first met them. And that was the introduction I got. He called me Ron Yacovetti.
I like
that. And like close friends do, we never let either of us or any of us live anything down when we mess up. And we all mess up.
Yeah, we all do, man. I mess up all the time. Just ask my wife. She'll tell you. So I brought you guys. You guys reached out to the Paranormal Guys podcast. And like I said, I'm sorry, but Steve's on he's looking for Bigfoot. And so I have the next best thing, the Mothman, Bob Anderson from Bob After Dark.
We thank him for filling in.
I feel like second best, nothing wrong with the silver medal in Neil's eyes, I guess.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, dude. Come on now. All right, so let's first get to kind of know you guys a little bit. Tony and Cherie, I'm going to come to you first. You guys are a married couple. Correct. Now, you are all a part of a paranormal group. Am I correct?
Correct.
Yes, we are.
All right. How many years have you guys all been doing this together?
Well, everybody's got individual years. There's actually 6 of us in Entity Voices Paranormal Investigation. And some of us had lived real close to each other, but over the years, people have moved. And so Ron and Lourdes are in New Jersey. Chris and Audra are in North Carolina. And Cherie and I are in Phoenix. But that hasn't stopped us from still getting together, investigating. Cherie and I have 14 years of paranormal investigation. Chris and Audra, 20 something. Chris has been doing it since he was young, and I'll let Ron and Lourdes speak to their years. But it's a fantastic group because we all have our own individual specialties. Each one of us brings something unique to the table, and it's worked really well on making the team super productive.
Now, let me ask this question. So I'm going to go to Cherie real quick. Now, everybody has on their team somebody who is kind of like psychically inclined, maybe an empath or anything like that. I'm going to say it's you.
Chris and Audra.
Not me.
Not you?
No, it's
Lourdes?
Audra.
Chris and Audra.
Chris and Audra are the one that is.
There are psychic,
Yeah,
sensitive information. Yes.
I am the only like handyman, or what you call that?
Handyman.
Not handyman, like carry
I'm a
all
woman.
Tony stuff. Like
That's not true. But she does a great job filming.
Yeah,
Everything
I'm
I
the-
have captured would not be able to be shown if it wasn't for her. She has got that camera in her hand.
I'm
all
just
the
a
time.
camera woman.
Well,
That's not
she's wearing a hat like a cameraman should be wearing a hat. There you go. Show.
No, I didn't shower today this morning. That's why I'm
that's
not.
okay. I mean, that's good.
Yeah,
She's
but
So
She's
let me
great.
ask you this. I'll get to Ron and Lourdes in a moment. How did Tony? How did you get into the paranormal?
right here. So when I grew up, my father was a physics, chemistry, and physical science instructor. So everything I asked as a kid, Dad, why is the sky blue? He'd say, well, there's water vapor in the air. When sunlight hits it, blue is the most common color to reflect. That's why the sky looks blue. So entities, spirits, ghosts was never really part of my background or even interest until I met Cherie, married her, and she started trying to get me to watch these paranormal shows that had just started to hit the airwaves. And I'd sit through about 2 minutes of it and get up and say, no, this isn't real. This is just for television. This is entertainment.
Right.
Well, then she tricked me one Valentine's Day and said, I want to do something different this year. I said, okay, what do you want to do? She goes, I want to go ghost hunting. And I was like, oh my God. But I had two choices. I could take her or have her mad at me until next Valentine's Day. So I took her. Well, the fact of the matter is we spent an entire weekend at a haunted location. And when she started reviewing what we recorded, videotape, pictures we took, I was blown away by the stuff that was in the photos, the voices that were answering our questions. And I tried for like 2 months to debunk it and couldn't. Finally said to her, let's go back and try again. And we did. And we went back again and again. And it just kept reoccurring. I think we investigated that place over 50 times and then spread out to locations all across the country.
so
And-
from then on, from a skeptic, now he is the most skeptic person I've ever known. From then on, now he is a believer.
That's true. That's how I got involved.
Yeah.
And that was 14 years ago.
Interesting. Now to the next couple on the dating game.
Very good.
Yes.
So how did you guys get into the paranormal?
Good answer. Good answer. Sorry, wrong show. Wrong show. I started just about 12 and a half years ago. We were in New Jersey, as Tony mentioned before. I used to live in Los Angeles for 14 years, and I started out there. I was always fascinated with anything to do with supernatural, cryptids. I'm going to date myself here, but the $6 Million Man had a Bigfoot episode. Like, I loved all that stuff.
Yeah, me too, man. I was a bit. I just got through watching all the seasons all over again. The $6 Million Man.
See? Loved it. Yep. Abbott and Costello meet the monsters, vampire, Dracula, Frankenstein. So that stuff always fascinated me. And when I lived in LA at the time, I was seeing somebody. We couldn't agree on 8,000 channels on TV what to watch, and we agreed on Ghost Adventures. And then they were doing local groups were doing events at some of the same spots in Southern California. So we went, got added to a team, and then in 2014 I moved back to the East Coast and got on a team here also. We met in 2016.
And that's when I started. So I've been doing it for 8 years, but I have had paranormal experiences all my life, and my family practices espiritismo, which is a form of mediumship in the Caribbean. So I grew up with it all my life. And the reason why I kind of shied away from it was because I saw something traumatic that happened when they were doing a ceremony, and I kind of shied away from it for a really long time, even though I was having paranormal experiences. And then I met him, and he kind of got me back into it.
Oh, cool. All right. Bobby, got any questions for our dating game people? All right. Go ahead.
No, I'm
The
good.
paranormal dating game.
The paranormal.
Dating game. I am your host, Chuck Woolery.
Love it.
All right. So what we're going to do is first, I'm going to ask the question, how did you come up with the technology, and tell us about Staticom, please, before I start listening to audio and so we can listen to them.
Ron, Lourdes, why don't you start, because you guys started the DRV and we can go from there.
All right. So I'm going to start from present day, and then I'll quickly dial it back to give you a history of how this all developed. So present day Staticom project, the 4 people you see here, would not be as great as it is if not for every individual of the 4 of us here. Our chain has no weak link. We work really well together. There's a mutual compassion and love and respect. Our cohorts there in Arizona are 2 of the kindest and most brilliant people we've ever worked with in this field. So that explains, I guess, the foundation of how we all came to do this together. Lourdes and I, about 2019, were kind of taken by a direct radio voice, which predates the Frank's box, the Spirit box, the Ghost box. The whole sweeping Ghost box modality existed after. And this is probably not a popular point of view to have, but I think we all kind of agree that the Frank's box and everything that came out of that was not a progression of ITC, but rather a derailment or an offshoot, an alternative. It didn't take what was already there and the efficacy of the method direct radio voice and expound on it and advance it. It just took it in a different direction that had different attributes, some of which are what the cynics target now. So direct radio voice came out of EVP research. The people who put EVP and ITC, instrumental transcommunication, on the map, Konstantin Radove, Friedrich Jurgensen, who's the father of direct radio voice, Dr. Annabella Cardoso, Marcello Bacci, the harsh fishbacks in Luxembourg, Hans Otto Koenig. These are the people who put EVP and ITC research on the map. They were doing direct radio voice. And so I'm not, and this is the difference, the only difference between Tony and I is Tony's a phenomenally talented electronics wizard, and he built boxes for 11 years, which were amazing. I didn't have the capability. If I was soldering things, I'd be high-fiving you with fewer fingers. It's not my skill set. And so out of an inadequacy and wanting to contribute and be more involved in ITC, I looked at what else was there to learn or do, and we found Marcello Bacci and then Dr. Annabelle Cardoso, and they're communicating through pure white noise on a vacant radio station in the AM band, no radio emissions whatsoever, and it outperformed anything I've ever seen a ghost box do anywhere. And I looked at her, I went, how is nobody doing this? So we started doing it, and then we developed it. I'll cut this part of it down. We developed it. We got involved with a software component. We got away from it, went back to the purest radio, went back to the software, took a deep dive, and started developing this. Somewhere a couple of years now, it was like 2 or almost 3 years ago now, through having worked with Tony and Cherie on a lot of stuff, and Tony can take the torch and run with it from here, but they had an interest in getting involved with doing this. And we, again, to go back to where I started, we looked at the relationship we had with them. Here's a guy who, and he may not remember to tell you this, but this is super important to me. He built incredible boxes for 11, 12 years, and he never sold them because it was never about going to market. It was genuinely about the research. And when you find people like that and you get along and you have a joint passion, you work with those people. And so when he wanted to get involved and they wanted to be part of the direct radio voice we were doing, it was a no-brainer.
Yep.
But this is going to be a huge step up. Possibly the best advancement we made in direct radio voice was collaborating and bringing the Rathmans on. And that's what led to, and I'll let him take it and do the transition to why it's now called Staticom, because there were 2 instances that were amazing that led to the change in the name. But that's the history of it. We took direct radio voice. I still talk to Dr. Annabelle Cardoso, who is, I think, the only surviving of the old guard of the pioneers from EVP and ITC research. And she's now familiar with all 4 of us and fascinated with what we're doing.
Okay. So, Tony, tell us a little more.
Well, we got to go on a 4-mansion tour investigation. We investigated 4 haunted mansions in 4 days, which was absolutely fantastic, but super exhausting. But Ron and Lourdes were running the direct radio voice. And I was aware of direct radio voice, but I never really heard it function live. And they had it functioning quite well. And after building spirit boxes for 12 years, I haven't touched one in the last 2 years, because when I started asking Ron, he was getting full sentence replies. You know, there's no echo, there's no reverb, there's nothing to distort the voice. It's pure, it's clean. And so I said, hey, can Cherie and I be part of this? We'd like to help develop it. They said yes. But the 2 instances that Ron's referring to is Ron and Lourdes went into a zinc mine, and there were other investigators there, and they had spirit boxes, cell phones. When they went underground, signal died. Radio signal died. So spirit boxes didn't work. Nobody got any voices. Cell phones died. No signal could penetrate 30 feet underground. But Ron and Lourdes, running Staticom, were still able to get voice responses. So that kind of tipped us off. Hey, something's not in the methodology and the theory of how spirit boxes work. Something's amiss, because Staticom was still able to produce full voices. So Cherie and I were doing a demonstration live in front of about 30 people. And when I opened up my DRV to show them how it works, I realized I had a sleep machine box, which literally has a setting of white noise on it.
Right.
And I thought, wow, I wonder if this will work. So I plugged that in instead of the radio. I asked a question and I got a response. But the crazy part about it was that not only did I get the response, 2 things happened. The response imprinted on the chip in the white noise recorder or the sleep machine, because it was recorded white noise, 3 seconds worth, and it would just repeat. But listening to it, you'd never know that. But my response repeated every 3 seconds. So I thought, this is a recorded white noise. So then in talking with Ron and Lourdes and explaining, and Cherie had videotaped it, so we had it recorded, we said, I don't think we need a radio, and I don't think it has anything to do with radio stations. So we went out and we both purchased white noise generators, live white noise generator, and hooked that up. And sure enough, it worked. And prior, we did tests. I recorded water running. I recorded rain. I recorded wind by throwing mics out the window of my car and driving around town. Could I pull voices from that? Yes, I could. But the problem is that the consistency of the frequency and the volume of the recorded white noise wasn't consistent. So it made pulling the voices much more difficult, but they were there. So the white noise generator generates the sound evenly from
the humming noise.
20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, and there's no variation in it. So
I'm sorry.
when we hooked it up and tried it, it worked. And I'm like, oh my God. So that's when we decided we could no longer call it direct radio voice. There's no radio anymore. We removed it.
Yep.
Right.
So let me try to comprehend this. Kind of like how, like, if a fan is going, and sometimes people hear voices,
yes,
fans, or they think that they're hearing music, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
And it's basically off of a white noise app. Is it going at a higher speed? Like, we're going to say we're going to use a fan. Are you increasing it where it's going at a top speed where, like, that white noise is, and understand, I'm not an electrician. It's just from my understanding.
Yeah, no, if you don't mind, I'd like to address that part. First of all, with the fan, and this happens a lot of times when people would even hear music, if you know how like a repeater works for like an internet Wi-Fi connection in the house, an extender, if an audio wave is encroached upon a certain area and you have white noise running, it can give it just enough kick where you're still able to pick it up and it sounds like you don't know where it's coming from. That's a possibility. The white noise generator is creating pure live white noise in the moment, and it's got and we think this is the same way that the spirit boxes or the ghost boxes work. We don't think they're using the fragments of the sounds. Because if you think about the insanity of having to have certain allophones and phonemes in certain places at certain times to make certain words, it would be like playing Scrabble on cocaine. They could never get the letters in the right place, right? So what we did with this, and this is what, and by the way, I have to comment because Tony doesn't ever say it, but I always say it. When he did what he did with the sleep machine in front of a live audience, that's ballsy. When you're home and you're experimenting, good for you. He's in front of an audience and he goes, you know what?
That was great.
I'm going to try this.
And he's not even sure whether it's gonna work.
I had no idea if it would work or
That's
not.
the ballsy part.
That's one of my favorite experiences about developing Staticom is that moment.
And-
that was great.
And damn right, if Cherie wasn't recording all the time, that moment would not have made it into our docuseries. We would not have had the ability to show that again. So the method, right? This is from the cynic's point of view, and this is what I love about what Tony contributed with that, what the Zinc Mind taught us. There's two things that get slung at ITC as criticisms. Radio bleed through or leakage from the radio, right? We've taken the radio out of the equation. The other thing we get is that there's warbles and artifacts of sound because white noise is random and you can discern patterns in randomness. First of all, when somebody says that you can discern patterns in randomness, that's an appeal to our intellect. Because that's how we communicate. When sounds come together in the forms of words with syntax and language that we identify, that's communication. So that doesn't debunk anything. That just bolsters our position.
Right.
The other thing is, and Tony mentioned, the white noise is generated at equal amplitude, spectral frequency of 1. Through stochastic resonance, which is when something enters the white noise and matches one of those frequencies, 20 hertz to 20,000, those two get more amplification. The rest of the white noise remains untouched.
Right.
So when people say that we're discerning patterns, yes. In randomness, white noise is not fundamentally random.
Right.
Okay. There are electromagnetic fields, quantum fields. There are things at play that can't be measured or calculated at the moment, but it's not fundamentally random. So white noise, what it is it's computationally irreducible. It can't be calculated at the time, but it's not random. When you see a coin toss at the Super Bowl, it's not random. It's the angle of the toss. It's the way the coin goes up, barometric pressure, wind speed. There are things that are deterministic in how it ends up, but they're not going to calculate that stuff on the 50-yard line with a bunch of guys in shoulder pads and helmets wanting to play a game.
Right. It's not feasible. The calculations would take too long before the coin is flipped. So, yeah.
Right. But the other really important point is that white noise contains no audio data whatsoever. Not syllables, not sounds, not words, and certainly not full sentences, which is what we've accomplished Staticom to give.
All right, and I'm going to give it to Bob in a second, see if he's got a question for you. Before, like I said, we're going to get into the audio parts in a moment. One of my questions is, all right, so when you're generating this white noise, is it bouncing off of anything magnetic?
It's a closed circuit system. It's running from a generator through an interface through the software. That's the other thing we should have mentioned too. The two things that we've done unique to ITC is everything people do with audio capture. They go home, they denoise it, they amplify it, they'll slow it down, and then they present it. So we're doing all of that in real time because ITC meant to be dialogue in real time. So we're filtering out the white noise after they've been availed to using it. And then we're slowing down live white noise in real time, which in the history of ITC, other than the 4 people here, had never been done before.
So we're not speeding it up because I know you said something about speeding it up. We're not speeding up. We're actually slowing it down.
Slowing it down, right. And the other,
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead, Neil.
So I was going to say, all right, so understanding there's no app involved.
No,
There is no radio involved.
correct.
It is a flow of white noise, a constant flow.
Yes, sir.
All right. Bob, you got anything?
I was the wrong person to co-host this podcast. So here's the thing, right?
Bob loves spirit boxes, though. He does very well. He's an empath himself.
I mean,
They're fantastic.
They
We own them. Tony built some of the best ones
Yeah.
I've ever seen. I still want him to send me one. It's a work in progress.
Yeah, but it doesn't compare to what Staticom can do. And what Ron was saying about the stochastic resonance or inverse stochastic resonance, depending on how it's actually coming through. But you've got that layer of broadband white noise. if a spirit says something or sends that energy into that broadband white noise, that voice gets elevated above the floor of where the white noise is at. What our process does then is it only skims off that voice, that upper level amplified voice, and drops everything below it. So you don't hear the white noise. You don't hear anything but the voice. And that's how Staticom works.
You know, one last thing, and then we'll get right into the videos. Have you ever noticed, because I've noticed by using the IP or even EVPs, have you noticed with the Staticom that you guys have, I call them mirror zones, where things are in reverse. The talking is in reverse, and then you put in your Audacity program and reverse and run it forward playing, and then you start getting intelligent answers to the questions that you were asking. I did that. I noticed that at a place called Bachelor's Grove Cemetery that's located in the Chicagoland area on a trail. One time I started noticing, I told Steve, that's my business partner, I said, everything's being talked in reverse. So what we did is we put it in the program. Have you guys noticed that with the white noise?
No. We've experienced that many, many times with spirit boxes, but never with Staticom or DRV. They're always clear, in correct order. The reason why we think that some of that may occur is, like Ron was saying, the difference between Staticom and the spirit box is the spirit box scans through radio stations at whatever speed you decide to have it do that, forward, reverse, whatever. But the radio fragments aren't used for the communication. That is why spirit box responses are so much shorter, truncated, because they're literally using the white noise in between those stations to get their message across, which we think, like Ron was saying, is part of the disenrailment of spirit communication with the spirit box method. You don't need that. All you need is the white noise. The radio only interrupts the communication.
Yeah,
no, we're not knocking SB7s, SB11s, or any other IP address things. You
Not
guys
at all.
have a new technology out there,
Sure.
or like an old technology that.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you.
I do have a question though. So the reason why I pointed out I'm the wrong person for this is because I'm the farthest guy you want from your tech team. I'm a klutz. I'm a klutz, and my brain can make things go wonky sometimes. So I'm curious, have you guys found anything to interfere with this system you have in place yet? So have you guys tested it? I'm assuming, you guys have field tested this quite a bit. Have you found something that has interfered with what you are doing yet? Does that make sense? Like, for example, I did an investigation in an old radio station, and the tower is still behind the building. And no matter what you used, every piece of equipment for the most part was going haywire because giant radio tower pumping out signal. So that's kind of my question is, what have you discovered something, whether it be a metal or running water, whatever it might be? I'm just curious if you guys found anything that interrupted signal yet.
I mean, so far, every time we've used it, it has worked. The only time we've had a problem was when we ran out of resources with our laptop, that we had to get a more powerful computer or laptop.
Yeah.
That's the only time we've ever had problems.
As we built out Staticom, it devoured more and more resources. It hit me first, and then it happened to Tony next. And both of us had aged like a sitting U.S. president when it happened, because how you see them getting older, because it was just unbelievably stressful, and it was just because we maxed out the resource on it. It's a closed circuit system, so there's the fact that it doesn't receive a signal, it can't record a signal. That was part of what we mentioned before, was to vet the process. We took out everything that would be cynical, low-hanging fruit from the equation. So it can't receive, it can't record, it's closed circuit, there's no ambient point of entry, there's no data in the white noise. So when you hear something crystal clear that answers you and has timing and relevance, it's difficult to refute. And then the warbles and artifacts things based on the predication of randomness completely falls short. So there's not a lot left except to say that it's a fallibility issue with pareidolia, which I would then say, well, if pareidolia is plaguing the field at that level, think of all the people who record audio phenomenon on a regular basis, different places all over, and they have characteristically the same things about the data. If pareidolia was the explanation to dismiss this stuff, you would have to have studies somewhere that showed how this was plaguing people in their daily lives. Like someone's walking into their supervisor and they go, "You're fired." And they go, "What, a raise? That's fantastic.
Right.
I'm sorry, pareidolia, my prescription ran out."
Right. If it was pareidolia, then other people would hear different things.
Correct.
If you and Lourdes are in one place, Ron, and you're both doing this and something comes out from the Staticom and you both hear the exact same thing, that's not audio pareidolia. And this actually brings me to Lourdes. I have a question for you. Are you an empath, a psychic, a sensitive?
Let me set up real fast, because not only can she answer that, but the thing that we just finished talking about, and because she's the one that pointed that she's a court reporter by trade. So when I take it, she hears everything. Like, I won't say anything bad about her if she's in the house. Like, she hears everything. People talking over each other, different speeds, cadences, dialects, slang, you name it.
Which brings me quickly
so you know what I wanted to get, right?
No, but
because I don't want to
marriage, my friend. That's called marriage.
I just want to say quickly, like with the hearing different things, I understand that but
that's it.
If someone says trip and I hear rip and they said, no, I said trip, that doesn't mean that a word wasn't spoken. So, and I'm not saying that pareidolia doesn't happen, but just because people hear different things doesn't necessarily mean the words weren't spoken, because sometimes we mishear each other as well.
That's what I wanted her to say, because just because people hear different things doesn't mean it's pareidolia. Because you could, if Tony speaks and we hear a different word, doesn't mean Tony didn't speak. Right? We don't think when we hear like a cat meow or a bear in the woods growl, we don't go, "Oh, the bear said, 'Holy crap, give me the keys. I need your car.'" We understand language. We interpret it. We've been listening to it our whole lives.
Right. And what I do, because now we're not in the courtroom anymore.
Right.
So I'm actually, what I do for the living, I do for the dead. I listen with headphones and I listen to the audio, and I write the transcript, and that's what I do. So, and a lot of times because they talk over each other, because now I have no control over it. So, and a lot of times I mishear things because they're talking over each other. So I have to go back and listen. But does that mean that words weren't spoken? Of course there were words spoken. It's just, it was not.
Right. That's a great point. And the fact that pareidolia does exist, it's a real phenomenon. It does happen.
Sure.
But there is a predetermined exposure that pareidolia becomes 5, 6, 7 times the normal occurrence of it when you're talking about paranormal.
Okay.
Yeah.
My last question for Lourdes is I was going to get to this point, is like myself, I hear these things while these things are before they're set on EVPs or we catch them on recording devices. Do you find that maybe sometimes you're here when you guys are out for your investigation, Lourdes, do you find that you're hearing it just slightly ahead of before it comes out?
What I noticed that
sometimes.
Yes, sometimes I may even be thinking about it and it'll come through, or a lot of times I've noticed that especially with Staticom, sometimes there's like a lower voice saying the answer, and then it'll come up louder. And I always seem to hear that softer voice. So when I say what it says, it appears like I knew what was coming, because then they repeat it and I had just said it because it came in lower and I was able to detect it.
Right. So one thing I've noticed with like spirit boxes is that sometimes like your Staticom or my Anahata that runs through an IP address, it works very, very well with people who are very in tune. And the moment that you're able to find someone who's very in tune with these technologies, it seems to just think of it as like Cerebro with Professor Xavier, right? And the minute that you have these things, they all of a sudden help that person who's in tune to become more in tune. Do you guys feel that the same way?
Oh yeah, that's why we work well together, because that's what happens with us, especially when the 6 of us are together. When we went to North Carolina, we went to the Montgomery house.
Yeah.
The activity amped up, and we believe it's because we were all together. Because
we also, for a unique 4 people in ITC, when the 4 of us do our lecture presentations, unlike probably ITC speeches for the last 25 years. We not only have an element of the technology and methodology that we do, but we also have a foundation or a substrate in analytic idealism philosophy, which is that reality in and of itself is mental or mental processes. So if you take that idea that this world out there that we share is not 3D and physical, but it's a representation of the actual thing, the same way you look at your computer and you see an icon on the desktop, that's not every process that it takes to open that folder. You're only getting the salient points you need to navigate through your computer. That is the model for which we think reality exists. So being in tune and being on the same page speaks to a certain openness, a certain permeableness with our boundaries that separate us as individuals. And I do think that that idea, what we commonly hear people call as you're blocking or you're shutting it down or whatever, that does speak to the overarching thing, I guess, that ties us together, which is a universal phenomenal consciousness that we are all a part of.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So first one I'm going to go to is this was sent in to us, extraterrestrials. I'm picking this first because I find it just so interesting that you now understand. Just so the audience knows, I'm listening to these for the first time. I didn't want to watch these at first because I wanted to be right here, right now. And I wanted to make sure someone like Bob hears it as well. And so he can give his interpretation. So we're going to listen to the first time. Those of us who are on YouTube, watch the video. It's going to come up for each and every one of them, Staticom first. And then we're going to get right into the paranormal voices audio.
Spirits, can you hear me? That doesn't sound like English. What language are you speaking?
Turkish.
You're speaking Turkish? I only speak English. Can you speak to me in English? Yes, okay, thank you. I heard you say spirits. Can I speak with extraterrestrials? Yes. I mean, I would think if I can speak with spirits, I should be able to speak with extraterrestrials too, right?
All right. So in this thing here, it's very interesting. And are you analyzing the voice description as it's going through?
Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by analyzing the voice description.
Are you analyzing the audio on it? Is by how can I put it? Of
When he annotates it, the words that he's putting up.
Yeah.
I'll answer, and I think Tony, correct me if I'm wrong. He's hearing a lot of it in real time, which is what you hear as dialogue, and then some stuff, as much as you listen to it and pay attention, some stuff you listen to it later and you go, holy crap, how did I miss that? And so he's annotating what he heard both live and some of which was probably afterwards. Is that correct, Tony?
That is absolutely correct. And like when we put up what we hear, people say, well, you're making people hear that. Human hearing is not that valuable because we've run tests where we put up something absolutely different and people can clearly say that's not what's being said.
Right.
So we put that up only so we can tell the audience what we thought we heard.
Right.
And if they disagree, so be it.
I totally understand what you're doing. I do the same thing. It's, and I'm sure you guys do it like groups do it where they argue with each other what they hear. You'll sit there for like 20, 30 minutes, go, no, he said this. That's what he said. There's actually a word that's coming on there, and like the name, he's saying whispering and stuff like that.
Yes.
They're whispering.
Yep.
I heard they're whispering.
Yeah, there's more there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot there.
Bob, you got any questions?
I find it fascinating because sometimes when you're doing like, spirit box method, word it slips my mind. The blindfold method. Yeah, thank you. When you're using that those methods, sometimes you'll pick up on a different tone or a different dialect or a different voice coming through. That one seemed like it was one clear voice the entire time. Do you guys ever catch it where you pick up on a different voice there that's saying, do you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
One of the clips of mine that you're going to show today has clearly has an English accent to it.
Which one is that? Which one did you say? We'll listen to that next. I have Should I Say My Name First? Upstairs they're sleeping.
That's it. Should I say my name?
All right, man, I'm good at this job.
And thank you, by the way, too, because you guys spent a lot of time on the setup of what we do. So when people hear these voices or they watch these clips now, they understand that this is pure white noise with no data.
No word banks.
Unlike a spirit box, there's no radio, there's no data, nothing. So these voices shouldn't even.
The only thing I did notice is that it almost sounds like it's underwater.
Well, you're getting voices from something. You're getting voices from another plane or another dimension. So yeah, it's possible.
That's the only thing I kind of noticed right off the bat is almost sounds like kind of underwater. Not that I hear voices underwater, but if you watch the movie and you're hearing divers underwater or something like that, it almost kind of sounds like that. But it's because I hate me personally. I don't like SB7s and I don't like SB11s. That's me personally. I think there's just too much of this damn static. I'm trying to understand. I like it like something like this. Like take for instance our Anahata. We have none of that kind of stuff. It's just pure, kind of like yours as well. But ours is off an IP. Yours is off white noise. So I'm going to go to this one right here. Should I say my name? You're saying it's going to be an English accent.
Sure. Evaluations. Sure that. And one way that's
Was that question for me? And could you repeat it, please? I heard, should I?
All right,
delicious. I love it. I said you're delicious.
We know they lie.
So here's the thing: is that it's almost like you're like a psychic, and you're having a sit down, and you're holding a conversation with this lady. That was a lady's voice.
Yeah,
this one, and it was kind of like an English voice, Bob.
Yeah, no, 100%. Answers my question. At first, when you played the clip, I wasn't expecting the music, and I was like, man, that's the clearest thing I've ever heard. But that was really impressive. Can I ask you guys one more question? I don't want to keep up the clip. Have you ever done, this is, you guys, what you're doing is like legitimate science research. What I deal with is a lot of pseudoscience. You know what I mean? Have you guys ever done a, I don't know if the correct term is a blind test, but stick a psychic in the room, muffed, run your machine at the same time and see if they pick up on the same exact words that are being said? Or
you did it with me.
We did it with her. We did a version of what Estes would be at the Hinsdale house with her in the other room. We've done it with Sam Baltrusis.
We've worked with a lot of psychics.
Mediums. Yeah, we've done it with mediums before who have pulled stuff that then came out or pulled stuff that were details about something personal to a guest in the room that went in lockstep with what we got. Then they would pull something also. If this stuff is coming from a universal phenomenal consciousness that we're all connected to, then it stands to reason that the same way that the medium aggregates the information through a dissociative boundary, that we're picking up the same thing, except just like terrestrial radio, you can't hear it. It's going past your head right now. You don't hear it. But through a mechanism that modulates the sound, you're now able to perceive the music on the radio that you otherwise could not. Your senses only have so much they can do. The device modulates the experience. So that's the same thing. There's a certain modulation that the medium goes through, and there's a certain modulation that our process does to make something not detectable.
Which Staticom is a medium. That's the medium.
That's what I'm saying. Is yours is more like even someone who's not a medium is holding a conversation. You can clearly hear that this lady is holding a conversation with Tony, and it is pretty cool. I'm going to say that word here is cool. It's pretty darn cool.
Yeah.
When you're able to have
The other part about Staticom, and both Ron and Lourdes do this on the East Coast, Cherie and I do it on the West Coast, but we do something called TDSI, or the Digital Seance Initiative, which is basically the entire practice of every other seance that's been done in years past, where you get a group of people together with the common goal of communicating with the afterlife, but we do it through Staticom. So when you were asking about people hearing the same thing, I know Ron and Lourdes have done this many times, so have Cherie and I, where an answer is given and everyone or more than half the audience go, oh my God, they just said, so there's agreement on what was heard, because there's no words put up when we do TDSI. It's only the audio coming through. But
Right.
you get that reinforcement from the audience going, yeah, that's exactly what I heard. Oh my gosh.
Great
So,
point.
yeah, I mean, that's
Now, let me ask you this. Have you ever done it? Because this is what I do with our boxes is I run it through questions like, what's 1 + 1? Because I want intelligent answers to intelligent questions.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'll do things like that, or I'll do a prayer and I say fill in the blanks.
Yep.
Bob's been with me, and all of a sudden he'll fill in the blanks. I'll go, Our Father who art in, they'll go heaven.
Right.
Yep.
That's perfect. That's what we were talking about before. That's our governing thing for anything being vetted as authentically anomalous is timing and relevance. Because if you hold up these and go, what am I holding? Through a box, Staticom, whatever, and the voice says glasses, unless the DJ is clairvoyant, then that's got to be anomalous, or you've got the most incredible luck in the world that you need to find out when that station's giving away cash, because the luck is on your side.
Right?
It's unquestionable. Timing and relevance is everything. We did a direct radio voice session pre-Staticom, and we would ask every session, they're numbered sessions, what session number is it? And she asked
we
again.
document everything. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Right. It's documented. I asked. They didn't answer me. They answered her. Right.
Yeah.
And they said 137, which was the number. So that's always good to do stuff like that, because it takes the probability of this being
Being deceitful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, and the other aspect to it is not only is, like Ron said, the timing and relevance to the question that was asked, but again, the bottom line here is there is no audio phenomena in white noise at all. That answer, the fact that it can answer with timing and relevance is
Right.
mind-blowing. But the fact that there is no audio data there to begin with
right.
elevates that level of the wow.
And when somebody tries to dismiss this as an epiphenomenon of our own consciousness, that we're creating the mistake ourselves through pareidolia, you lose that. That has no explanatory power once you go back to what Tony said, which is that multiple people in the room heard the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me ask you this question.
And we also did an experiment live when Chris and Audra in North Carolina, and we have this live. We asked a question, what did Chris wrote on a piece of paper, and verify what Chris
The word he wrote, right.
Right. And
They did
Staticom,
it. And they went from Staticom being broadcast in New Jersey down to North Carolina, read the word, came back to answer via Staticom in like a second or two.
Was that on our show, Tony? Was that on our show? Because I know we went down to the house in between from the documentaries in Mississippi, and we got Save Her Rathmans came through. Well, they're in Arizona, we're in Mississippi, and Chris and Audra are in North Carolina, and Chris did the same thing. He wrote something on a paper that same day.
Yeah.
And from Mississippi, North Carolina,
I think it was zebra
and Arizona, it said what Chris wrote down on the paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bobby, got anything?
That's insane.
Yeah. So do you guys do like a live seance with Staticom? Do you guys do that?
That's what the Digital Seance Initiative is. Yeah. Lourdes and I did an event at the Shanley Hotel in Napanoch, New York.
Oh,
and there was
invited to something like that online if that's what you guys
absolutely.
Yeah.
We haven't done it online concurrently with a live event, but I mean we could if there's Wi-Fi and if we, it could be.
If you did something like this, an interesting idea. One, like you like a live Facebook thing or whatever you want to do, And like as an experimental, I write something down here in the Chicagoland area. You write something down in your areas that are there. Bob writes something down in Indiana. And
We could do that.
What would be. I mean, if we don't get it, we don't get it, but at least you put forth the effort.
We could do that with you guys privately if we wanted to, right, Tony?
Yeah, well, there's two problems. One, we've done that many times and it works. I mean, there's no doubt about that. The biggest problem right now is that we did upgrades 2 or 3 weeks ago to the system. And we literally went from what we called Staticom to Staticom 2.0. It is so intensive on the computer that adding StreamYard or something on top of that has now become our difficulty.
Oh, okay.
But the way we've done it before that we could do it if you guys wanted to like privately hold a session was if we go live on Facebook, one operator, and then run it through a broadcast to a Facebook Live, which could be for everybody to see, or you could select just specific guests by invite. We've done that before. Tony's done them. Yeah. Tony did one a couple weeks back. He did one. I didn't know he was doing one. I was doing something here, and I get a voice that goes, Tony does his own session. And then I went, Lourdes, listen to this. The voice that Tony does. I wonder if he was doing something. And she goes, he was live 9 minutes ago.
I was looking at it actually at the moment. I was like, he was live 9 minutes ago.
Yep.
They've communicated between the four of us back and forth to opposite sides of the country. They've told me what Ron and Lourdes were doing. I asked one night when Cherie and I were doing a Staticom session, is Ron and Lourdes running Staticom now? They clearly said yes. In fact, you might have that clip. I won't go any further.
You know what? Before we run that clip, I want to ask you this other question. How are you going to understand what's malevolent? Have you had that experience yet where something malevolent comes through that's trying to pretend that's something that's not?
We haven't had a lot of dark experiences. I'll let Tony and Cherie go, but we haven't.
No.
We really haven't. Does benevolent exist? Yes, it does. Is it a common factor? No, it's not. We've been doing this for 14 years, and we've run into maybe one instance when we were doing a private home investigation where it was clearly on the darker side, and we actually had to have the house professionally exorcised. But does that happen? Every time you turn it on, does that happen? No.
We get rude spirits like
right.
Rude is different than
curse and things like that. The only one that we've got that was kind of dark and it was more of like a warning is one damnation. They were saying damnation, but it was more of a warning about how we are living our lives here.
I'll send you that one. Yeah. I'll send you that one a la carte. It's not one of the ones we sent in for today, but it's 1 minute and 8 seconds of the same voice on a rant from the Shanley Hotel. Oh. It's unbelievable. We've never seen a ghost box do anything like that long, but it's the closest to a dark thing.
Yeah. And it was a warning, really.
We don't get a lot of malevolent, negative stuff.
The reason why I was asking the question is because, like spirit boxes, any form of spirit boxes, any kind of spirit that's out there is going to try to invite you in, and it's going to pretend it's something. It's going to pretend that it's angelic or your best friend down the block.
Right.
And then after you do it, what do? We start to get obsessed with these things. That's the reason why I was asking that, is that after some time, did you ever come up with one person that you keep getting through, and then somewhere down the line you found out this isn't who you thought it was, or pretend?
It's hard to validate and do an ID check to an area that, for all intents and purposes, we have no empirical data or ability to observe. It's unobservable wherever it's coming from. We don't have a view or an insight to the source of where the vocals are coming from. So we can only go by the validity and the details of the vocals we get. Sometimes if it's something proprietary, I know Tony had a couple of things with a family member of his that came through that were pretty specific on like something he said, and I'll let Tony explain that. I want to spoil that.
I'll tell you what, why don't we go to the next one? Say hi to Ron real quick. Okay.
That's the one. Yep.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Bam, I'm good at this.
I love when they do it. You are good.
Is Ron running Staticom right now? He is? Can you say to Ron, can you say Tony says hello?
Wow, that's weird, man. That's freaking weird.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of back and forth. They told us one time how many attendees they had at a digital seance event.
Yep.
Next day I called Tony. How many people showed up? Spot on. Same number. Yeah.
All right, so I got Staticom 2.0 right here. This is your updated system that you were just talking about, Tony, correct? So I'm
Correct.
going to play this really quick. One moment.
You guys hear us? We're able to now?
All right, so that was Staticom again. Now, I have to be honest with you, this is pretty cool stuff. What do you think, Bob?
It's fascinating. When I listen to sessions that other investigators do, I always attempt to close my eyes and not pay attention to any subtitles that come up or anything because, I want to avoid matrixing something. But it's so clear how these voices come through. I'm used to peeling through like static and like repeating it on, trying to pick up on something, but it's so clear. It's fascinating.
Yeah, if I can speak to it, so that one was one of mine that I recorded here just after 2.0, and I believe everything we've submitted between the four of us are all from 2.0 version of Staticom. And I want to say, because this is so important, as much as from day one with direct radio voice, Lourdes and I did, and we developed this thing, and then Tony and Cherie got involved, and they helped move it along. The 2.0, I came up with the name 2.0 because Tony did a phenomenal thing through some of his tests, and he leveled up the quality and the clarity of how Staticom sounded. And I went, this, like an operating system on a phone, deserves to have something that we can denote in time when this thing leveled up. So this is again where the teamwork amongst the four of us is so cohesive and so in sync, because this was, to me, a big deal. He made a breakthrough within the last couple of weeks. And so that clarity that you're speaking of, that even without looking at it, you can hear it.
Because we still had like a little noise floor. It wasn't bad, but it was still like the underwater. We still had a little bit, and Tony was able to. It wasn't reverb. It was like a little underwater,
almost like the aquatic background sound that you're mentioning.
But Tony he eliminated it. He got rid of it.
It's a delicate dance. It's almost like audio archaeology, where we're trying to dust off the bones for clarity and definition without damaging what it is we're trying to reveal. So when I tell you he leveled up the process a couple weeks ago, it's not easy to do.
No,
I'm sure it's not.
Well, thank you for that. But the other thing to remember is that we actually had a bunch of voices that we've captured, analyzed by audio engineers. And one of the things they said was that the construct of the voice coming through inhibited the exact characteristics of human speech, tonality, vocal expression. There's a couple other words that are eluding my mind at
consonants, vowels, diphthongs.
That's my favorite. Diphthongs.
Yep.
But that is not seen on other. It can be picked up in a spirit box, but Staticom has the ability to truly show that vocal expression, and that is not commonly shown or expressed in two-way ITC vocal communication.
All right, go ahead, Bob.
I was going to say, I was about to ask something similar. My background is in audio production and video production. That was what I went to school for. So I spent a lot of time studying that. And when you run spirit box sessions through, whatever software you use or whatever, you don't normally pick up on the same patterns of speech. The waves are just a little off, which is where a lot of skepticism comes from when you look at spirit box sessions as you're recording. But like picking up on this without the static, and obviously I'm not looking at your data, but it's so interesting because if what you're saying is correct, which I believe you guys, that would change, how like sessions are recorded and played back through, because voice patterns, are important. And if it's coming, if people are looking at this that are audio engineers like myself and are able to see that, that's so fascinating to me.
Yeah, we had a couple audio engineers go through it in depth. So and that's one vertical of validation. The other one I always lean to, and we had one audio guy who was the one who threw warbles and artifacts at us. And I went, look, I know you know how to produce sound and how sound behaves. We have a court reporter. She gets paid to identify linguistics and patterns in speech to take down testimony for the state of New York. So she's attuned to picking that stuff out. She's not going to mistake warbles and artifacts at a consistent level like that, at which these vocals come in.
Especially when there's timing and relevance. I mean, really.
Right.
And I wanted to tell our audience who are listening today, Staticom, Ron, Tony, and the ladies, they all sent me in so much audio evidence. It's unbelievable the amount of evidence. Like, I got an email from Ron at about like 9 o'clock this morning saying, "Hey, I got more for you, dude." And I'm like, "We got enough, dude."
Yeah. It was just a footnote that too, because we did sing you plenty. I recorded something yesterday that sounds like my mother and her mother Lucy coming through at the same time. In the beginning of Closer to Direct Radio, a few years ago, I got something with them coming through together also. And it was the second time I had that happen. That instance, the first one, was the impetus for us to slow down live white noise in real time, because it came in so fast. And the moment all I heard was on, and they had Ron and this whole heartfelt message. You can hear the emotion.
It was like 3-4 sentences.
I only caught it when I slowed it down 50% to where I sound intoxicated, but the voice sounds completely normal, which means they were speaking faster than we can detect, and certainly faster than the human vocal tract is capable of speaking. I don't care if it's an auctioneer on cocaine. You can't talk that fast.
Right. Well, you never know.
Can I ask you guys another question?
Sure.
Have you guys ever taken your audio and run it through a spectrogram before?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you ever caught any anomalies in a spectrogram from importing the audio? For the folks at home that don't know spectrogram, that would basically be taking audio files and converting it into images. I know that sounds wonky. There's a ton of science behind it, but in a nutshell, that's what it is. When you're looking back over your evidence, as far as like spectrogram, have you guys ever caught an anomaly in the images that the audio creates?
Well, let me just say that the process of creating Staticom from just a vocal perspective literally takes up 4 of us every free moment we have.
Oh, sure.
So people have asked everything. Well, when are you going to add video? When can we see who's speaking? I mean, this isn't an overnight process where, it's done. Right. We've been doing this now for years, and there's years left to research just on the audio side. So yes, we've done that, but do we have the time to focus on adding additional components to it at this point? No, we don't.
Oh, of course. I was just curious if you guys ever caught something. No.
Yeah, no. I would even posit the response that the vocals themselves that we capture and can identify visually, if you look at the spectrograph, are the anomalies, because you're talking about white noise devoid of any data. There's no explanation for variances that coincide with the same cadence and pausing that dialogue has. Like if you listen to some of the clips, there's pauses, there's no talking, nothing. And then Tony will say, "Is he doing Staticom?" And the voice goes, "He is." It hadn't said anything until Tony asked for a response. So that, to me, that would be, at least on a basic level, that would be where I guess I would say those are the anomalies.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
That would actually be
great question.
That would actually be a pretty interesting idea. I was just sitting here thinking about it. Is what happens if you were to use the Staticom and almost like an SLS at the same time, and ask the spirit where they're at and point it in that direction, and then you can kind of make out the form of who you're talking to, even though we know it's a stick figure. But like he's talking about the spectrum, could that be a possibility where you can even go one step further and start getting maybe photos? Because what you guys have is that advancement of where we're going. Okay, we started out with regular AM stations, AM, FM, SB7s, SB11s, Frank's box, Joe's box, whoever's box. And now through this, we're starting to get a more advancement. We're getting closer and closer to being a telephone.
Correct.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you phrasing it that way. And that was the magic of this too, is that this methodology is derived from something that predates the Franks box. The American ITC crowd that's pretty much fostered from television thinks that the inception of ITC starts with the Franks box, when that in fact is not the genesis of ITC at all. It does go back to Friedrich Jurgensen recording bird songs for a documentary with a real recorder and getting his father's voice on the recording back in early EVP research. So that's a big part of it too. And then one of the things I love about what Tony brings to the dance is that he has had a strong foothold on both sides of the ITC fence. He's built boxes for years, and he is now a technical expert, I will say, on the Staticom project. So he's walked in both worlds. So he knows, like, for him to say I haven't turned on a box in 2 years is, to me, telling.
Yeah.
Let me ask you.
The other thing about Staticom is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I said we're going to probably wrap it up in a minute. So I want to ask you guys, is there one audio left that I could show that you guys think is your best supporting that you've sent me that we haven't done already? Would you like the
what's left on the list?
Well, we have 300, Rick McCullum. We love these tests. At least I solved head tech. Yes, Rathman, and upstairs they're sleeping.
Can we play 2 more?
Yeah, I can play 2 more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which one? You want upstairs or sleeping? Or which one do you want from us? Let Tony and Cherie pick one of theirs, and we'll pick one of ours.
Well, I had it in my head now I lost it.
Well, for us, you can play 300.
300?
We solved this one. We solved this one in 300. I was going to say for you guys if you wanted.
All right, I'm going to do 300 first.
Thank you, Neil.
Yeah.
How many spirits are with us right now?
300.
300? Did you say 300?
So it says right after you go like this, 300. He actually says, "I think."
Yeah.
You hear him
Yeah,
say,
you are absolutely correct.
Yeah, I not to put a
Tony's
very good ear for these things.
Tony's face when they say 300, you're like, whoa.
Damn, 300. My favorite movie.
Real quick, too, we haven't brought this up the whole show, and I can't believe we hadn't said this. We're not broadcasting out either. So for the idea for people who think that this is coming from like a trucker or a CB or shortwave or ham radio, nobody could hear us, even if we could receive signal, and we can't. We're not broadcasting out.
Right.
No, and I say the same thing to people when they hear our boxes as well. So, Lourdes, what was the one that you wanted me to do, my dear?
I think we solved this one.
I think we solved this one.
Or something, the solved one. At least I solved this one. I think that's what it is.
At least I solved this one. I got 300. Rick McCullum, say hi to Ron. We love these tests. At least got it.
Yeah, there it is.
So who am I speaking with?
At least that's all this one.
So when you say who am I talking to, the next thing is they say Preston. His name was Preston. Go back to that, and you're going to hear the name Preston.
Good ear. Okay,
we're gonna have to listen to that. Yeah.
Very fascinating stuff, guys. I have to admit, this is. So let's ask you this: is how are we selling this? What are we doing?
There it is. Tony Rathman will sell this for $9.99.
Yeah, that question we've been hit with more times than we could count.
Yeah.
The answer at this point is twofold. One, it was never meant to be sold. This is not a money thing for us.
Right.
It was research, and the research works. people want to get a hold of it. We understand that. Again, the main concern is that there's 4 of us, and the understanding of how it works, the components needed, the process of setting it up, to explain that, even if we possibly set up a website, showed how to put it together, the questions that would come back, because Ron and I have both at separate times been so frustrated with it that the other one has to talk him down to get it back up functioning. But the overwhelming response to having, a couple thousand people trying to do it, the 4 of us could not handle that. And it would stop our research. So that's the biggest concern right now.
Yeah, it was never devised to go to market, like he said. And then to do it, the only way we could do it would be as a consult, where we would sell a mapping, because some of the components in our software chain are free. Some of them are proprietary that we license. So if we packaged it and sold it almost box-esque, right? We would have a gazillion licenses in our names distributed all across the land for which we're responsible. There's no way we can do that. So we can sell a mapping saying these are the components, this is how you put them together in this order, and this is the settings for each one. And we can do that, but there's going to be an onus of comprehension on the operator or the consumer, because we can't geek squad everybody.
Kind of like how somebody goes and gets a Huff's box. Everybody designs their own little Huff box. When they take it off from, what was his name? Bob, what was Bob Huff's first name?
Steve.
Stephen Huff. He
Right.
came up with the chakra box, I believe. And a lot of people ran designs off that. I know my Steve, he did that as well. Bob, before we go, do you have anything to ask these fine people?
I want to sit on an investigation with you guys at some point. I know you can't sell me the technology, but I really want to play with it. You guys have a really interesting technology here that I think is extremely important to, our field of work. Something I run into, in my life is people call me a storyteller, and I'm like, sure, that's fine. But you guys have to understand there's research put into this, and they're like, but it's a pseudoscience. And I hate that word, even though I understand it's necessary. But what you guys are doing are taking people like me, quick joke. People always ask me, am I a medium? And I'm like, no, I'm a 2 extra large boots. But what you guys are doing are taking things like what people like me do now, and you're actually presenting evidence that's more concrete than your simple instrument can pick up. So I don't know if you guys are ever open to doing investigations. I'm just interested to play with this because it's so fascinating to me.
We are, and it's not a pseudoscience. It's not even a science. The applied sciences or the available sciences are used to assess what it is it does. And that's one of the things that we run into, is that the accepted worldview of material science now can't explain this stuff. The reason we lose the argument in defending the paranormal is because we paradoxically try to both defy and adhere to material science as is accepted, which is insane. We're saying it's supernatural, it's beyond natural, it's not measurable science, and then at the same time we're trying to prove it by cramming it back into a material science explanation. It's not a pseudoscience. That's why, again, we have a philosophy of reality being mental processes that would make all of this stuff not supernatural but quite natural.
Right.
The theory must fit the facts, not the other way around. And material science doesn't have an explanation for this stuff. So we need to look for something that's more coherent and more parsimonious, less steps, to explain reality that allows for this stuff. This stuff is not hallucinating. And even when somebody says it's hallucination, they're denying the statement they're trying to make. Because what is a hallucination? It's a conscious experience that you're having. It's a subjective experience. So it doesn't.
Now, I'm sorry, Tony. What were you going to say, buddy?
I was just going to say, it's like trying to improve your tax return by going to your plumber. The two just don't correlate. And it's not going to give you any answers. So materialistic 3D science explains, studies, measures, and explains predictability. It doesn't give you any information as to how it's occurring. And so we're trying to take something that we're trying to figure out how it's occurring and put it into a science spectrum that only measures and predicts response. you can't do that. They will never line up. They will never match.
Without physicality, there is no measurement. There's no physicality without measurement, rather. And because our culture, especially in the paranormal, is so preoccupied with predictive modeling that we're forgetting to read the letter for the sake of describing the envelope.
Right.
I want to say you four should be very proud of yourselves. This is such an interesting, I don't want to say product.
We appreciate it.
It's such an interesting instrument. It's such an interesting process. Whatever the term is that you want to use for this, you guys should really be proud of yourselves. I spend 80% of my day doing stuff like this, and I've never seen anything quite like this on a technology base. I've seen things I can't explain. I've listened to things I can't explain, but this is just on a whole nother level.
It's a methodology. That's what it is.
Methodology.
Yeah.
And we appreciate that. We appreciate it.
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Now, aren't you glad, Bob, I brought you on today?
Yeah, at first I was like, man, Neil, you brought me into a tech conversation, and it's like, I know. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna play catch up to see if I get this, and I
knew I picked the right guy, man. All right, so guys, Staticom. First thing I'd like to say is, number one, thank you for coming on. I appreciate that.
Thank
the
you.
other thing is, I really think that you guys should really do something a little bit different with it. And I'm just gonna do this as my little thing: murder cases, kidnappings. I think you guys should really go to a department, somebody that you probably know, and see if you guys can do that. Because what you're getting is intelligent answers to these questions. If somehow or another, you ever notice how one person builds a technology that's meant for one thing, you're making communication.
Yeah.
So what happens if you could use that technology that you're using to help solve some crimes?
Mm-hmm.
You never ever know. I would really, and I'm being sincere when I say this, get a hold of somebody to see if you can try to help out. Let's see if more good can come from the greatness that you guys are already doing.
We appreciate that.
We do. We appreciate it. Because one of the things that I do enjoy from doing this that we never expected, because we were doing it for the research, is that we now go to these places and family members are coming through and people are telling us that it was life-changing moment for them and that they really so that we've been helping people like that, which we didn't expect, but it's been happening.
Marcello Bacci with a vacuum tube radio in Grosseto, Italy, would give closure to parents who lost children. Primarily, he was helping people, giving them those moments. And we started out just like Tony and Cherie, purely for the research, not to sell it or any of that stuff. And we ended up on the path of Bacci, where Tony and Cherie have done the same thing. You're getting people who are having these moments that are profound because they're getting information from loved ones they believe.
Yep,
that's coming through.
I know exactly what you're saying, but I just thought I'd throw it out there. Get a hold of a local department, somebody you know, a detective or something like that, and say, "Hey, listen, I want you to just sit down with you for a minute."
Yeah.
And just
we've actually done that.
Oh, well, there you go.
And the answers that came through were submitted. The person in charge of being asked to get the answers came to us. We got responses. We submitted them to them. That person turned around, submitted them to the FBI. And the FBI called us a few days later wondering how we got this information. So it's a great path, but it's a little scary too.
It is.
Because the technology can give information that isn't readily available. And so there's some concerns there as well.
We're going to be Lila first, like for families, wanted to reach out to their loved ones who pass away. So we're not there.
Yeah.
We get helicopters that pass by, and I always tell him, they're looking for you, man. They're looking for you.
It's a little scary.
It can be a little scary.
All right. Well, Tony, Cherie, Ron, and Lourdes, I want to thank you very, very much. And Bob from Bob After Dark, I appreciate you coming on, being my pal, my buddy, my chum. I wish you all the best of luck. And to my audience out there, like always, boys and girls, boo.
Oh, bye there, everybody.
Oh, bye there.
Thank you.